I pulled into the factory parking lot, same spot I've claimed for 15 years now. The morning sun barely peeked over the horizon as my boots crunched across the gravel. Johnson from accounting waved from his car, our daily ritual of acknowledging another mundane Monday. The factory floor hummed with the familiar rhythm of machinery. My team needed direction on the new production quarters, but my mind drifted to last night's conversation with Mandy. Or rather, lack of conversation. We'd sat through dinner in silence, the clink of forks against plates our only dialogue. She'd scrolled through her phone while I'd watched the game highlights. During my lunch break, I checked my messages. The guys wanted to know if I was in for Saturday's soccer match. Of course I was, those matches kept me sane. 2 hours of forgetting about spreadsheets, quotas, and the growing distance at home. My knee wasn't what it used to be, but the field was the one place where everything made sense. Back home, Mandy's car wasn't in the driveway. Probably working late again at the store, 3rd time this week. I microwaved leftover lasagna and ate at the kitchen counter, staring at the family photo from our vacation 5 years ago. We looked happy then. Maybe we still were, just differently. The house felt too quiet. I flipped through channels, landing on some home renovation show Mandy usually watched. The hosts were too cheerful, making obvious jokes about paint colors. I switched it off and grabbed my tablet to review next week's production schedules instead. When Mandy finally came home, she breezed past me with a quick hey and headed straight upstairs. The familiar scent of her perfume lingered, mixed with something else, maybe the store's new fragrance line she'd mentioned. I wanted to follow her, to talk about anything really, but what would I say? That I missed how we used to be. That felt too much like admitting something was wrong, and I wasn't ready for that conversation. I went back to my schedules. Numbers were easier than feelings. They always added up, followed rules, made sense, unlike whatever was happening in my marriage. I first heard the whispers at Thompson's convenience store. Mrs. Rivera, who usually chatted about her grandkids, gave me this look, part pity, part curiosity. She stopped mid-sentence when I walked in, and her friend Barbara suddenly became very interested in the cereal boxes. A few days later, Johnson pulled me aside during our shift change. He scratched his neck, avoided eye contact. "Listen, Mark, my wife saw Mandy at the Coppermill Cafe last Tuesday. Said she wasn't alone." I brushed it off. Told him Mandy meets her retail team there sometimes, but his expression stayed with me. The rumors spread like oil in water. At soccer practice, Dave kept giving me these sideways glances. Mike suddenly had trouble looking me in the eye when we discussed weekend plans. I caught fragments of conversations, always dying down when I got close. Some guy from Riverdale. Lunch dates. A silver BM. I tried to ignore it. Focused on work. On schedules. On anything else. But then I started noticing things I'd been blind to. Mandy's phone always face down now. She'd step outside to take calls. Her retail manager meetings ran later and later, sometimes till 9 or 10. Last night she snapped at me for asking about dinner plans. I can have my own life, Mark. I don't need to report every little thing to you. She stormed upstairs, leaving her phone on the kitchen counter. It buzzed. A text preview lit up the screen, "Miss you already." I didn't check who sent it. Didn't want to know. The distance between us grew wider each day. Our house felt bigger, emptier. Mandy spent hours getting ready in the morning now, something she hadn't done in years. New clothes appeared in her closet. She started wearing perfume again, not the one I'd given her for our anniversary. Just rumors, I kept telling myself. But at night, lying awake in our bed, listening to her breathe, I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone else knew something I didn't want to admit. The silence in our house had become deafening. I watched Mandy pick at her dinner, pushing the pasta around her plate without taking a bite. When I reached across the table to touch her hand, she pulled away, mumbling something about needing to check her phone. Later that night, I tried bringing up our weekend plans. Maybe we could drive up to that vineyard you liked, the one with the cheese platters. She didn't even look up from her tablet. "I'm tired. Think I'll just stay home." It had been like this for weeks now. The woman who used to curl up next to me on the couch, who'd laugh at my terrible dad jokes, who'd grab my hand during our evening walks, she'd vanished. In her place was this cold stranger who couldn't seem to stand being in the same room with me. At bedtime, I walked into our bedroom to find her already under the covers, faced away from my side. She used to wait up for me, reading her romance novels. Now she was asleep before I even brushed my teeth. I slid into bed, careful to stay on my edge. The mattress might as well have been the Grand Canyon between us. When my hand accidentally brushed against her back, she shifted away, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. During breakfast the next morning, I tried again. How about we grab dinner tonight? That new Italian place opened downtown. I have a late meeting. Her tone was flat, dismissive. She'd been having a lot of those lately. Tomorrow then? God, Mark, why are you pushing this? The irritation in her voice cut through the morning quiet. Can't you just give me some space? Space. That's all we had now. Space at the dinner table. Space in our bed. Space in conversations that used to flow so naturally. Every attempt to bridge that space was met with an eye roll, a sigh, or worse, complete indifference. I watched her get ready for work, spraying on that new perfume she'd started wearing. She didn't kiss me goodbye anymore. Just grabbed her keys and left. The door closing behind her with a finality that echoed through our empty house. The Saturday afternoon sun beat down on the soccer field as I laced up my cleats. My usual pre-game ritual felt different today, the weight of everything with Mandy pressing down on my shoulders. Johnson passed me a water bottle, and I caught Mike and Pete exchanging glances. During halftime, sprawled out on the grass catching our breath, Pete broke the awkward silence. You've been off your game today, Mark. Everything all right? I wiped the sweat from my forehead, staring at the ground. The words caught in my throat for a moment. It's Mandy. Something's not right. Mike sat up straighter. The rumors? I nodded, pulling up grass between my fingers. She's different. New clothes, staying late at work, barely talks to me anymore. Maybe she's going through menopause, Johnson laughed, but Pete elbowed him hard. You need to confront her, man, Pete said, his face serious. Set up cameras in the house or follow her after work. Catch her red-handed. Mike shook his head. No way, that'll just make things worse. Give her space. Women go through phases. Phases? Wake up, man! Johnson leaned forward. My cousin went through the same thing. Turned out his wife was seeing a gym trainer for months. Their words swirled in my head, each suggestion pulling me in different directions. 20 years of marriage. A whole life together. I couldn't throw that away on suspicions and workplace gossip. Look, I said, standing up as the referee signaled the end of halftime. I appreciate the advice, but I need to handle this carefully, if I'm wrong about this. Pete clapped my shoulder. Whatever you decide, we've got your back. I nodded, my mind already forming a different plan. Instead of confrontation, I'd pay more attention, document the changes, try to reconnect. Maybe there was still something worth saving. I never thought I'd become the kind of person who spies on their own wife. The salesman's pitch about home security felt ironic. I wasn't protecting my home from outsiders. I was surveilling what happened inside it. Back home, I meticulously placed the cameras. One in the living room, disguised within a bookshelf. Another overlooking the kitchen from atop a cabinet. The master bedroom camera took the longest. I positioned it on the dresser, angled just right to capture most of the room. My hands shook while mounting each one. Every night after work, I'd lock myself in my home office, telling Mandy I had extra paperwork. The footage played out on my laptop screen, mundane scenes of everyday life. Days passed and I started feeling foolish. Maybe I'd let paranoia get the best of me. Then it happened. Thursday afternoon footage. I nearly scrolled past it, just Mandy coming home early from work. But then a man followed her through our front door. I recognized him from her office Christmas party. Some sales rep, whose name I couldn't remember. They didn't waste time with small talk. My screen filled with images that turned my stomach inside out. Right there on our couch, the one where we'd spent countless evenings watching movies together, where we'd nursed our kids through fevers, where we'd fallen asleep in each other's arms so many times. I watched until I couldn't anymore, slamming my laptop shut. The evidence I'd sought was there in brutal high definition. My hands clenched into fists, knuckles white with rage. All those late meetings, all the distant behavior. It wasn't in my head. She'd brought him into our home, our sanctuary, made a mockery of everything we'd built together. The stoic facade I'd maintained these past weeks cracked. Raw anger surged through me, but beneath it lay something worse. A deep, gutting sense of betrayal that cut straight to my core. The rage inside me had transformed into something different. No longer hot and explosive, it settled like ice in my veins. Each morning I'd watch Mandy get ready for work, knowing full well where she was really going. The footage from those cameras played on loop in my mind, her leading him into our home, their casual disregard for our marriage. I stopped asking about her day. When she tried telling me about work events, I'd just nod and walk away. The confusion on her face almost made me laugh. She'd gotten so comfortable with her lies that my sudden withdrawal threw her off balance. "Mark, is everything okay?" she asked one evening. I barely glanced up from my laptop. "Fine." The word hung between us, sharp and cold. She lingered for a moment before heading upstairs, probably to text him. Let her wonder. During dinner, I kept my responses to single words. When she reached for the salt, I slid it across the table instead of handing it to her. Small gestures that spoke volumes. The silence that had once been uncomfortable now became my weapon. But cold shoulders weren't enough. The more I thought about that smug bastard in my house, the more I needed to act. I started digging. Through Mandy's phone bills, I found his number. A reverse lookup gave me his name, Richard Stewart. IT guy, lived about 30 minutes away. I created a new email address and built a fake health promotion website. Spent hours making it look legitimate, complete with testimonials and professional graphics. Then I crafted an email targeting people in his demographic, overweight men in their late 30s. The Bait. A revolutionary weight loss program with a free trial period. Richard took the bait. He filled out the detailed questionnaire, giving me everything: his home address, workplace, even his daily schedule. Each piece of information was another bullet in my chamber. I drove past his house one evening, memorizing the location and general layout. He lived alone in a modest ranch house, perfect for someone who didn't want neighbors asking questions about visiting married women. The whole time I gathered intel, I maintained my icy demeanor at home. Mandy tried harder to engage me, probably sensing something was off. But I'd mastered the art of being present yet completely unreachable. Just like she'd been doing to me all those months, only now I was the one in control. Every piece of information about Richard became another step in my developing plan. I knew his routines, his vulnerabilities, his weak points. He thought he was signing up for a health program, but he was really giving me everything I needed to dismantle his comfortable little world. I kept the conversation going and informed him that every few weeks we have a prize for all participants. It's intended to boost their motivation. The coldness inside me grew with each passing day. It wasn't just about hurting them anymore. It was about calculated, precise revenge. They'd treated my marriage like a game. Now I would show them what it meant to play for keeps. After another sleepless night, I waited until Mandy left for work before springing into action. The suitcases emerged from storage one by one, lined up in our bedroom like soldiers awaiting orders. Each drawer open with purpose, my hands moving through her belongings with mechanical precision. The designer clothes she'd bought recently went in first, price tags still attached to some. Into another suitcase went her jewelry box minus the wedding ring I'd given her 20 years ago. That could stay behind as a reminder of what she threw away. Photos, trinkets and mementos filled a third case. I worked methodically through the bathroom, gathering her expensive lotions and that new perfume she'd started wearing. My movements remained steady, controlled. No rage-fueled tossing or ripping, just calm, calculated packing. The time for anger had passed. Each item represented another betrayal, another lie. 20 years of marriage condensed into 4 suitcases and 3 cardboard boxes. Covered them in the car and left just one suitcase. When headlights swept across the driveway that evening, I smoothed my expression into something pleasant. Mandy walked in, dropping her keys in the bowl by the door. "I packed your bags," I said, keeping my voice light. "I'm taking you somewhere special this weekend." She hesitated, that familiar look of guilt crossing her face. "I have plans." "Cancel them." I stepped closer, smiling. "Come on, when's the last time we did something spontaneous? I've already made arrangements." Her resistance wavered as she searched my face. I maintained the mask of earnestness of a husband trying to rekindle something lost. Finally, she nodded. "Where are we going?" "It's a surprise." Little did she know I'd already packed everything she owned. The weekend getaway was just a convenient fiction to get her where she needed to go. As I heard her moving around upstairs, I allowed myself a small, grim smile. Sometimes the best revenge required patience and planning. I kept my eyes fixed on the road ahead, deliberately avoiding Mandy's gaze as we drove through the darkening streets. Her perfume, the new one she'd started wearing months ago, filled the car, making my jaw clench. The same scent that had lingered on our couch after their afternoon meetings. "You're being awfully quiet," Mandy said, shifting in her seat. Usually you're excited about surprises. I grunted, keeping my response minimal. She filled the silence with stories about work, about plans for renovating the kitchen, about everything except what mattered. Her voice grew more uncertain with each passing mile. Mark, seriously, where are we going? This isn't the way to any hotel I know. The street signs were becoming familiar. I'd driven this route dozens of times while gathering intel. Each turn brought us closer to her lover's house. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. You'll see, I said, the words coming out colder than intended. Mandy fell silent, finally picking up on the tension. The houses grew larger, more spread out as we entered her lover's neighborhood. I saw her posture change as recognition dawned. Mark, why are we here? I pulled up to the curb in front of AP's house, put the car in park and pulled out my phone. Mandy's breathing quickened beside me. What are you doing? I dialed her lover, memorized from weeks of research, making a delivery. Richard answered on the third ring. Hello? Congratulations, sir. You've won a special prize. Could you step outside to claim it? What? Who is this? Just come outside. I hung up and waited. Mandy grabbed my arm. Mark, please. Whatever you think. The porch light flicked on. Richard appeared in the doorway, confused but curious. I stepped out of the car and walked around to shake his hand, watching his expression morph from puzzlement to recognition to fear. Here's your prize, sir. I gestured to the van packed with Mandy's belongings. Take good care of her. Mandy scrambled out of the car, mascara already running. Mark, wait. Let me explain. I didn't look back as I got in the car. Didn't acknowledge her calls or her pounding on the window. Just shifted into drive and pulled away, leaving them both standing there under the yellow porch light. The satisfaction felt hollow as I drove home alone. 20 years of marriage ended with a handshake and a mockery of a delivery, but it was done. I'd given her exactly what she wanted, whether she realized it or not. I headed home alone, the first night in our empty house weighing heavy on my shoulders. Sleep didn't come easy, but I had work to do. First thing in the morning, I contacted the best divorce attorney in town, Sarah Matthews. Her reputation for being ruthless in court made her perfect for what lay ahead. The initial meeting with Sarah set the tone. I laid out everything, the affair, the evidence from the cameras, text messages I'd gathered, and a detailed timeline of Mandy's deceptions. Sarah nodded, taking meticulous notes while explaining our strategy. With this evidence, we're in a strong position for both the divorce and custody, she said. The boys are old enough that their preferences will carry significant weight. The following weeks blurred into a parade of paperwork and legal proceedings. I threw myself into building our case, documenting every interaction with Mandy, every missed family dinner, every suspicious late night at work. The boys, Trevor and Jake, stuck by my side through it all. They'd figured out what their mother had done, and their silence toward her spoke volumes. The first court appearance hit different than I expected. Mandy showed up with her lawyer wearing a conservative dress that couldn't hide who she really was. The judge, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, listened as our lawyers presented their cases. I kept my face neutral, even when Mandy's attorney tried painting her as the victim of a loveless marriage. Sarah brought out the evidence methodically. The photos, the text, the timeline, all of it laid bare for the court to see. When Mandy's affair with Richard came to light, her composed facade cracked. She didn't expect me to have so much proof. The boys' testimonies sealed it. Trevor, at 16, spoke clearly about the months of absent dinners and missed football games. Jake, though younger at 14, described finding strange texts on her phone months ago. Their words carried weight, not just legally but emotionally. They chose to live with me, and the court honored their decision. The judge's ruling came down like a hammer. Primary custody awarded to me, with Mandy getting supervised visits twice a month. The divorce terms reflected her infidelity, leaving her with far less than she'd expected. Back home, the boys and I settled into a new routine. We ordered pizza that first night after court, none of us feeling much like cooking. The house felt different, lighter somehow, despite the empty spaces where Mandy's things used to be. Then came the attempts at reconciliation. The first time Mandy showed up at our door, it was late on a Thursday. Her eyes were red, makeup smeared. Mark, please. We can fix this. 20 years, we can't throw that away. I looked at her, feeling nothing but cold certainty. You threw it away when you chose him. She tried again the following week, and the week after that. Each time I shut her down with a simple no. No explanation needed. No room for discussion. Some nights, after the boys went to bed, I'd pour myself a whiskey and sit in the backyard. The work helped during the day. I'd throw myself into new projects at the factory, taking on extra responsibilities to keep my mind occupied. But in those quiet moments, the weight of it all would crash down. Mandy's visits became less frequent as weeks turned to months. The last time she showed up, I didn't even step onto the porch. Just spoke through the screen door. "Stop coming here, Mandy. It's over." The boys barely acknowledged her attempts to contact them. They'd made their choice, same as I had. The quiet stability we built, just the three of us, meant more than her hollow apologies ever could. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed the story, remember to like, subscribe, and comment on the video for more stories like this. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. If you have any similar stories to share, leave them in the comments and we'll make sure to bring them to life. Thanks for watching.